Hi, watching this video will take 60 minutes of your time and leave you with a bunch of useless information about Tears of the Kingdom, so why even waste your time with an intro? Let's go. The mini stable in Lookout Landing either has a lot of business whenever you're not looking, or something funny's going on. Let's say you're spending a lot of time at Lookout Landing and you're at the stable and you're like, okay, cute, I'm admiring these horses. Oh, how nice. But if you walk to the other end of the fortress and head just outside the walls of Lookout Landing through these doors under Purr's place, and then turn around and walk right back to return to the horses, take a good look at which ones are there now. They're gonna be different. And the kicker is, you don't even have to leave Lookout Landing. You can just open up the doors, not walk through them, turn back around, and it still works. What? Whether it's an optical illusion or for real, there's something creepy happening with the mural down in the depths. The depiction of the Demon King looking at you straight on could be possessed or doing one of those old TV or movie things where the painting's eyes follow you around the room. I'm not sure if it's alive or just happens because of the way the light comes off the eyes carved into the wall, but either way, I'd argue that the game's developers chose to do this, so it's no accident. And while we're talking about this mural, it's possible to break the rocks obscuring the full picture before you're intended to do so. It requires a glitch called zuggling, which has been patched on current versions of the game, but what's hilarious is that the cutscene remains the same, but the environment is affected by your actions. So when Zelda says her line about not being able to see the rest of the mural, she's literally looking right at it.
Looks like the rest of the murals are obscured.
If you fuse a Lizalfo's tail to the end of a spear, it'll uncoil when you strike, which is technically useful information because this acts as a whip and extends the weapon's reach, but I bring it up because it reminds me of one of those party favors you blow into that makes a lot of noise and wiggles at the end. Using Zonai carts, it's possible to make a giant octagon and you can send the spirit helper version of Yunobo circling around it like Sonic the Hedgehog, or I guess technically more like Knuckles since he's red. It works best if you use 16 carts to make it bigger, but if you use only 8, it's a super crazy loop-de-loop. Lucky Clover Gazette paraglider fabric has a lot of Halayan text written all over it. The most prominent, and only one that I could transliterate, says right up on the front, "At the same time that Hyrule Castle floated, something happened on the ground." Because the layout of the surface map was originally designed based on Kyoto, Japan back in the 2000 teens, many of the Zonai shrines get their names based on real-life locations nearby where the shrines are found. Ex-user SoFar69 made the original discovery that the names are anagrams of their Kyoto counterparts, and someone who goes by the name Chubby Bub created a Google map of Kyoto with the shrines of light overlaid to help visualize their proximity to each other. Most line up really well, but not all. Many shrines are named after large areas or long streets. The stone mounted atop Mount Hylia on the Great Plateau is the gravestone of King Rome, who lost his life fighting during the Calamity. It's unknown how anyone dug a grave into the rock all the way up here, but someone came to pay their respects by leaving a royal claymore at his gravesite. This sword is not, I repeat, not a reference to Age of Calamity because that game is completely non-canon to the official Zelda timeline. The statue in the main square of Zora's domain used to be that of fellow champion and pseudo-love interest Mipha. That statue is moved up on top of Shatterback Point for some reason, and replaced with a statue depicting the moment when Link and Sidon rode together to break down Vah Ruda's defenses so Link could go inside and reclaim the Divine Beast back in Breath of the Wild. If you head to the Faron region, specifically at coordinates 903, 2696, and 10, you'll find yourself standing in a grassy patch of phantom lava. This mysterious patch of fiery ground existed in Breath of the Wild near the Colosseum, but now it's over here, and it's unclear how this mistake made its way to the surface. But apparently, if you're good enough with glitches to clip out of the map around this area, there is lava deep underground where you're not supposed to be. Well, it just so happens that I am good enough with the glitches to clip out and go underneath, so I went looking for the lava, and I couldn't find any. I found some cool under-the-water looking water and some interesting visuals between the surface and the depths, invisible ground that I could walk on. And then I figured I came this far, I might as well go all the way under the depths. so that's what I did too. I eventually hit the bottom and couldn't find any lava down here either, although there are some pockets of gloom. And the only fiery thing I was able to see was the sun, surprisingly, still all the way up there and visible from all the way down here. The Hyrule Castle we see in modern times was built on top of where King Rauru placed the holding seal on the Demon King back in ancient times. During that era, the castle Rauru resided in was actually on the Great Plateau and was only 2 stories tall, as depicted in the glyph we get from one of the Dragon Tears. A much more humble building. There's no longer any trace of that building, but we can see from multiple shots in multiple cutscenes that it was close to the Temple of Time. We can see it through the window of the castle in the cutscene where Rauru is having a conversation with Ganondorf, and so based on that we can determine it was located roughly in this location above the Shrine of Resurrection, right around here where it starts to get cold and snowy. It would also explain why there are some ruins left over around this area. Another cool fact to note, based on multiple memory cutscenes, is that the Zonai shrines seen on the Great Plateau are in the exact same spots as the Sheikah shrines were in Breath of the Wild, yet another connection between the Zonai and the ancient Sheikah. The 5 Rito sisters we gathered together for singing practice in Breath of the Wild have all undergone some awesome character development over the years between the games. They used to be children, but they've all grown up into young adults now. Keel, the purple one, who seemed to be the most responsible from childhood, now runs the armor shop. Genli, the green one, used to hang out in the kitchen waiting for one of her sisters to cook for her, but now she runs the kitchen and cooks food for her siblings. Kree, the blue one, used to weep because she felt helpless. She wanted to help save the Rito village from the corrupted Vamido, but didn't know how. She now runs the general store. Kotz, the yellow one, thought that she would feed Vamido salmon until it was full. She's grown up and taken over the inn. And Knots, the red one, loves to sing and has seemingly taken over the leadership role among the 5 sisters, assigning them tasks to complete. The Ultra Hand ability is a reference to Nintendo's history as a company. Before they got into video games, actually about a decade or so before the video game industry even existed back in 1966, Nintendo created a little grabber toy they called the Ultra Hand. It was a commercial success, selling over 1 million units, and it helped save Nintendo from serious financial difficulties. If you sprint and jump while going through the entryway of a shrine, the camera will go a bit farther in than it would have if you simply walked in or ran. And if you backflip through, the camera and Link has to spin around really fast to show the animation. "51 out of 152 shrines are Rauru's blessings. That's 1/3. Well, it's actually 33.55263%. To be a true 1/3 of the shrines, there would have to be one more puzzle shrine out there. But then that would mess with the system of trading 4 lights of blessings for a new heart or a section of stamina. Some of the Lizalfos out in the Gerudo Desert work in shifts. The Fire Lizalfos take the first shift during the day, and the Ice Lizalfos work second shift through the night. When their shift is up, they'll burrow underground and tag in the opposite Elemental Lizalfos, who then burrows back up to the surface to clock in. A pretty cool detail to reflect the extreme temperature changes of the desert climate. Although I noticed if you set up a camp and stake them out from far away, sometimes they just won't go away. There'll be 6 of them out there all together hanging out, and they shouldn't be doing that because you can see how they clip through one another. And if you run up on them to see what gives, whoever's supposed to be off duty will burrow back underground and get out of there. Another interesting thing I observed about the Lizalfos is how ravenously they eat their steaks. I had never seen them eat before in Breath of the Wild. And the Fire Lizalfos like to dance every once in a while, or maybe they're stretching or doing some sort of calisthenics. The trees that come to life and attack you randomly around the overworld are reminiscent of the trees seen in The Wizard of Oz.
What do you think you're doing?
Especially the ones in the Mount Satori apple orchard, which most resemble the scene from the 1939 film where the trees throw apples at Dorothy and the Scarecrow. I'm not saying this is a direct reference, just that it reminds me of it. The first time you complete a shrine, you cannot skip the cutscene of Link being gifted a light of blessing from the statues of Rauru and Sonia. This cutscene is shorter than all others, clocking in at 50 seconds, and has Link making an exaggerated facial expression as he observes this light infusing with his new magic arm. For all other times you finish a shrine, you can skip this cutscene completely and get right to the part where they fork it over. But if you choose not to, you'll notice they're all 8 seconds longer than the first time we see it because it adds a line at the start saying, "Visitor to this shrine of light, that which imprisons and purifies the ancient evil, ... Then gets into the part where they say, "You have done well to reach this place." And his facial expression subtly changes from that of the first time. And on a similar note, speaking of unskippable cutscenes, the first time you pray at a goddess statue for a new 5th of stamina wheel, we get a shot of Link getting powered up and having the stank of gloom released from his body. That first time is the only time we're ever shown this cutscene. The rest of the times you pray for a stamina 5th, you'll always just get it right away until your energy overflows with vigor. There's an announcement board standing out front of the newly established elementary school in Hitano Village, and although we cannot read the fine print, the Hylian text on the headers lets us know a bit about what they're for. The far left sheet is a caution notice, then the next one says account. Whose account of what, I have no idea, but the next two are newsletters, and it seems the first one is more important because the paper it's printed on is bigger, and there are 3 red lines coming out from each side of the header to grab your attention better. It looks to be about the school itself, judging from the photo on there, while the second one is more of a general newsletter. Pen the Pelican replaces Koss as the game's anthropomorphic bird and offers Link the chance to become a reporter for the Lucky Clover Gazette, citing an opportunity to shine light on the truth and expose the evils of Hyrule. If you accept and complete these duties, he'll open up a bit with some dialogue subtly referencing our old buddy Koss. Granted, the potential princess sighting side adventure is one of the most expansive tasks in Tears of the Kingdom. Completing all 12 will take you a little while. Still, among other things that are more useful, notably rupees and the Froggy set, it'll unlock some incredibly interesting extra dialogue from Pen, especially if you're a Breath of the Wild veteran. He says, "A famous bard once perfected his craft in this place, studying the songs of this land." Players hoped this reference was foreshadowing that Cass would return in separate DLC questline, but it looks as though this immensely popular Breath of the Wild character will remain absent in Tears of the Kingdom forever. However, Pen is not the only one we get unique dialogue from as a result of reporting for the Lucky Clover. After completing the duties at the outskirts stable, a Yiga disguised as Zelda will appear downhill from the Shrine of Resurrection where you first met King Rome's ghost disguised as an old man at the opening of Breath of the Wild. This Yiga mocks Link, pretending as though Zelda lost her memory of who she is, essentially making fun of his amnesia from the beginning of the first game. And if you approach this Zelda imposter while dressed as a Yiga, you'll get scolded for how you could blow their cover as such a perfect disguise. If you head straight to the castle to talk to Haas before stopping by Lookout Landing to see Purah, who tells you to go see him, you'll have wasted your time because he directs you back to her anyway. But once you return to him following Purah's orders, he'll give you some unique dialogue. Nothing special though. The Zonai stakes have a different pitch depending on how deep you stick them in the ground or whether or not you fuse a couple of them together. And players have found a way to create music using them with laser beams. I'm more of an electric guitar kind of guy, but I experimented with this makeshift instrument by using an upside-down cart as the base and glued an axle of a big wheel to it with a beam emitter attached to the tread of the tire. Using this method, you place the stakes in a circular pattern around the tire, closer or farther away from each other, staked more or less into the ground, or fused to a second stake to get a deeper pitch. But the real secret is throwing a steering stick on the center of the wheel so that you can control how fast it spins around, thus controlling the tempo of the song. Fellow YouTuber No Hypothesis did the Legend of Zelda main theme using this method, and I discovered another YouTuber named Foxtrot64 who used a different technique to do a full cover of Saria's song from Ocarina of Time using a beam emitter staked to a rail cart in Death Mountain. Both of their videos are in the description. This is a painstaking process of musical creation, but if you'd like to see a new series or maybe just a one-off video of me doing covers of some of your favorite songs, drop a comment and leave me your musical requests down below. If there's enough interest, I'll start practicing the stakes for you. There are plenty of people who say unique things when Link approaches while dressed in Yiga gear. In Kakariko Village, he'll be greeted with perhaps even hostile dialogue from Paya and Dorian. Paya tries a more respectful approach, talking about the twisted history of the mask, how people are afraid of looking at it, and just to be respectful. While Dorian straight up tells you dressing like that is in very poor taste. Purah's reaction is kind of in between Paya and Dorian in that she talks about poor taste as well, but also talks about how Link has a responsibility and a lot of people look up to him, and how while she appreciates him exercising his freedom, maybe he should show a little bit of restraint. Furthermore, if Link wears the set in Gerudo Town, he'll be thrown into the town's prison. But if you strip naked or put on the Yiga mask right above the Gerudo secret club where there's a Hylian man who snuck in, you will not get arrested. And Purah will comment some unique dialogue if you get the new champion's tunic, aka the Tunic of Memories, the well-worn headband, and the Master Sword. She asks about the headband and says that this is a classic look for him, but I mean, it's throwback, but this is a classic look. One more is Cece over in Hiteno Village. If you've met Cece, the fashion guru of Hiteno, you may have noticed that she takes it to the next level. She'll rate your ensemble on a scale from 0 to 100 and critique your style, getting a bit philosophical at times, saying things like, "Fashion is a mirror that reflects our inner selves." Whoa. Approaching her in Just Link's boxer briefs gets a score of 0. But she's open-minded enough to raise that score if fashion trends change someday in the future. She's also impressed by the Phantom Ganon set enough to make a reference to Ocarina of Time, where during the Forest Temple boss fight we see Phantom Ganon leaping out of the paintings of the wall. CC notes that this set is so vibrant it looks like it leapt out of a painting. And part of her wishes it would just leap back in. While wearing the Wind Waker set, she makes note of the shading and a smell of salty sea breeze, a reference to the art style and the flooded map of Wind Waker. And if you approach her while wearing the full Hylian set, she'll score you 200 out of 100. It's a simple outfit, but apparently the most vogue around town. You cannot throw down Bright Bloom seeds indoors no matter how dark it is, they'll just explode and disintegrate on impact. However, you can open a door, then throw a Bright Bloom seed at it and it will stick to the inside. But now the door will not close, so it's sort of like a door stopper. But not a really good door stopper, because if you throw it at the outside of the door while it's closed and then try to open it, it'll just shatter the seed that way. I first discovered this while trying to get better lighting inside the Lookout Landing Secret Royal Emergency Underground Shelter, so I could get a good look while trying to read this notice about Link and Zelda. All I did really was bother the other people hanging out nearby. Eventually, viewers watching me struggle helped come up with a light fused to a stake contraption to illuminate this poster, but it still was so low res that we cannot read it, which is super unfortunate because it looks like it reveals Zelda and Link's last names. This same poster is also seen in Purah's bedroom. There's been a subtle change in control and camera work while swimming up waterfalls. It used to be that when swimming up a waterfall using the Zora armor, that Link would automatically move to the center of the waterfall and swim all the way up. Now, if you start from the side of the falls, he'll swim up from there and you can shift him side to side as you please. Also, the camera will stay directly behind him and follow him all the way up through the jump, as opposed to moving at an angle slightly below him and letting Link get briefly off camera during the jump at the top, like it did in Breath of the Wild. Some players believe that Tears takes place in an alternate timeline from Breath of the Wild because when Zelda falls down into the chasm at the start of the game, she travels back in time to ancient Hyrule, so she surely must have altered time somehow simply by interacting with Rauru, Sonia, Minoru, the Demon King, and the Sages. It's the same time travel logic described in the Back to the Future movies when Marty McFly and his family start disappearing after he interferes with the moment his parents were supposed to start falling in love. One example that supports this theory is the way the geoglyphs in Light Dragon are absent from Breath of the Wild, meaning that the Light Dragon never existed until Zelda went back into ancient Hyrule. But this is Zelda Timeline fan speculation at its finest, because nothing official has yet been said. And while I'm mentioning the geoglyphs, is anyone else bothered by the way the scimitar geoglyph doesn't stay lined up properly on the map as it curves around the land, zooming in and out? I figured this was an early version glitch that would have been addressed, but no, this is just how the Purapad is. In memory number 12, Rauru holds a meeting with the 5 sages and Princess Zelda. This meeting takes place in the Forgotten Temple, specifically in the exact spot where the giant goddess statue is found in modern times. This giant statue has fallen over somehow since the events of Breath of the Wild, perhaps during the earthquakes of the upheaval, but it's obviously not here yet in this cutscene. The main menu is a loop of the wall carvings we see at the very beginning of the game under Hyrule Castle. From the time you first start playing the game through for a while, as you make progress, there will only be a couple pieces of the mural that show, much the same way as we only see part of it during the prologue. But you can expand to show the whole thing.
This is a huge discovery.
I don't know how it works, it's quite ambiguous. You would think that going down into the depths and blowing up the rest of the rocks off of the mural would do it, but that's not it. So you would think maybe beating the game, going through the Demon King would have it happen, but no. Or perhaps going through the temples and then talking to Purah and completing the regional phenomena. Still no. This shaky, camera pointed at the TV footage someone posted on Reddit is literally the only footage I could find to prove that this exists. And I believe what you have to do to make this work is get all 5 sages, but you may have to go as far as completing all main quests. All I know is that it's a thing and that it's possible. And it's cool. There are little sheets all over the walls inside Impa/Paya's headquarters that when translated say Sheikah. The unique thing about these though, as opposed to all other texts I've found, Sheikah, Hylian, or Gerudo, is that they're read vertically right to left instead of horizontally left to right. This is how traditional Japanese writings are read. The 3 Zonai elemental emitters, Flame, Frost, and Shock, are all designed as the 3 dragons from the respective types. Ferocious, large, single unicorn-esque horn for the Shock emitter is most noticeable, and the Frost emitter has swept back horns just like Naedra, while the Flame emitter has 2 horns facing backward on either side of the head, exactly like Dinral. Link makes 4 different facial expressions while swinging his weapons. The most common is an angry face with the mouth partially open. The next most common is a partially open mouth but barely showing his upper teeth. Then there's this one where he only opens his mouth a little bit and closes it as soon as the attack is finished. And the opposite of that is having the mouth wide open like he's yelling. And if you don't move him around after the attack, he'll stand there poised, doing a subtle bounce back and forth, holding that angry face, waiting for more action for about 3.5 seconds. In the cutscene where you get the Master Sword, I can't help but notice how the way Zelda holds it looks like she's playing a bass guitar for a rock band in her spare time. I took the time to Photoshop a bass in the Master Sword's place so those without a ridiculous imagination can enjoy the thought a bit more as well. And if she were to actually hold a bass this way, it'd mean that she's left-handed. You can light up the insides of shrines, at least the appearance from the doorway, by throwing a few bright bloom seeds on the ground around the back. If you then go look through the holographic entryway, you'll notice how it illuminates the interior. It's most noticeable at night. While riding a horse, if you gallop using at least 1 spur of stamina and then pull back on the left stick to stop your horse and press X to jump off and immediately press ZR to pull the bow, if you time it correctly, the slowing down into bullet time will catch the horse's neigh as it stands on its hind legs, and it sounds kinda creepy. During the battle against the Wind Temple boss, Colgera, we're treated to a riff in the middle of the epic theme which references the music originally heard while playing the Wind Waker while on Dragon Roost Island. It's significant because Dragon Roost Island is the home of the Rito, and Link is fighting to clear the Wind Temple for the Rito now. Most players learn rather quickly how the depths reflect the surface and that shrines and light roots are always found above and below the same spot. But you may have yet to notice that the name of every light root is simply the name of its corresponding shrine spelled backwards. The depths and the surface are connected geographically as well, with the topography being a mirror image. Where there are hills and mountains on the surface, you'll find valleys and canyons in the depths. And where you find the heart-shaped Lover's Pond on the surface, you'll find a heart-shaped island down below. You'll notice there are two Poes on this island, insinuating these spirits were a couple in life with such a loving devotion to each other that they stayed together even after death. Damn. We're bringing back the top 15 tower list Tears of the Kingdom edition, so in a moment I'll count down which towers blast Link to the highest altitude, but you should know, just because they take Link higher doesn't necessarily mean they give him the most air. Not all Skyview towers blast equally, measuring from the platform where you scan the Purapad to the peak height as shown on the map when it reveals the terrain. 5 of them are equal though, with a launch height of 1,143 vertical units, and another 2 launch him 1 vertical unit less at 1,142. There's only 1 tower that launches him over 2,000 vertical units, and 4 that launch him less than 1,000. With that said, the top Skyview tower launch list goes like this. Number 15, Rospro's Pass. This one only takes you up to 835 vertical units. Not only that, this is also the one with the weakest launch, sending you up 602 vertical units from the ground. Number 14, Poplar Foothills, at 941 vertical units into the sky. Number 13, Lookout Landing, at 1,168 vertical units. This tower is built with the lowest starting point at only 25 vertical units above sea level. Number 12, the Hyrule Field Skyview Tower at 1,207 vertical units. Number 11, Upland Zorana at 1,222. Getting up there higher on the list and higher in the sky to kick off the top 10 towers is the Paquita Stonegrove Skyview Tower at 1,286 vertical units. Then coming in at number 9 is the Sasra Slope Tower, 1,309. Number 8 is the Ulri Mountain Tower at 1,330 vertical units. Number 7, Rabella Wetlands, 1,365. Then we have Eldon Canyon coming in at number 6 with 1,368. Number 5, the Gerudo Canyon at 1,449. Number 4 is the Mount Lanayru Skyview Tower at 1,831 vertical units. Fun fact, this is by far the highest starting point of any of the Skyview towers at 539 vertical units above sea level. And getting into the top 3, this covers not only the highest altitude total, but also the most amount of air launched. Number 3 is the Gerudo Highlands at 1,965 altitude. Number 2, Lindor's Brow at 2,054, the first one to crack the 2,000s. And number 1, the Typhlo Ruins at 2,222 vertical units into the sky. This is also the highest launcher with 2,042 vertical units difference between where we are up in the sky and where we started on the ground. The box art from this game apparently lines up with the North American Breath of the Wild box art to create one continuous image. I know Nintendo does a lot of subtle, hidden stuff with this series, but it's a stretch for sure. Still, Death Mountain does seem to sort of flow into the Sky Island here, and the land Link stands on looks to have the same corner behind some clouds down here. Is this intentional design, or is this nothing more than Zelda fan wishful thinking on the internet? Either way, the artwork for this game is incredible. Raru's theme is comprised of only 2 notes, and because of its simplicity, it has a hidden, built-in detail calling back all the way through to the beginning of the series. Take a quick listen. Does this sound at all familiar? Well, it should. They're the same 2 notes that begin the original main theme. Get it? Because he co-founded the Kingdom of Hyrule in this game, so too does his theme music reference the beginning of Nintendo's greatest action-adventure game franchise. You can have some potentially ridiculous fun with NPCs who like to walk around near building supplies. It's tricky, but by carefully scooping them into an enclosed space, you can fling them away by using Ultra Hand to place them in a box, then quickly trapping them inside and tipping the box on its side. The moment you deactivate Ultra Hand, they'll want to return upright and go to their regular movements, which has the potential to send them hurtling through the air randomly until they run out of HP or the box breaks. The Hylian walking around the upper edge of Lookout Landing works best in my experience, and this clip from Gameniac doing it is one of the most outrageously entertaining things I've yet witnessed while goofing around in this game. I found at least one spot where you can ascend, but if you do so and then stand in place for a moment upon popping out, Link will sink back into the ground and you'll have to try again. It's on the Great Plateau, and if you ascend from the underground portion just outside the Kyokugan Shrine, this will place Link right on the edge of a muck puddle near the North Chasm. You can, of course, climb out safely, but like I said, standing still for just a moment doesn't end well, and he'll return underground to the last place he stood on solid ground. And on that note, whenever you use Ascend and never press A to fully pop up on the other side or press B to cancel, after 30 seconds, Link will tire of waiting for you to make up your mind and he'll just pop out for you. We all know Link will drown if he swims until he's out of stamina, and you're more than likely aware that Nintendo even gives players a second chance in this game with a last hope stamina boost as if he gets an adrenaline rush to fight for his life. But if Link has plenty of stamina, I argue that he's able to breathe underwater. To demonstrate, I trapped him underneath a lily pad and stayed there for a while, and guess what? He's totally fine. When you have a shield equipped and you tap ZL fast enough, it looks more like Link is scratching his butt rather than going to brace his arm within a shield for protection. If you have a one-handed sword equipped and no shield and cycle between pressing Y and B fast enough, it looks like he's trying to use his sword as a back scratcher. And if you have a one-handed sword and a bow equipped but no shield and then cycle between Y and ZR, it looks like he's trying to scratch both his back and his butt simultaneously. And if someone should happen to walk right past Link while he's doing this, they'll make awkward eye contact and probably think he's an idiot. Was anybody else confused at the start of this game based on a combination of previous Breath of the Wild experience and watching the trailers for this game of Link skydiving, or maybe just pure logic? On my first playthrough, I was so positive I missed a second treasure chest with the ancient tunic hidden inside that I went back and autosaved to look again. I found it super counterintuitive that the shirt wasn't with the pants this time and you had to go through the Great Sky Island and look for it. I've talked about how the Zora appreciate being blasted with a Zonai hydrant, but what about Gorons and flame emitters? You'd think because they tolerate heat so extremely well that Gorons would love it, but instead they tend to react as if they're being messed with. If you blast a Goron with flames, they'll comment on how annoying Link is, or how the flames could be hotter. If anything, some of them are apathetic about it and seem to yawn it off. It's a tough crowd, these guys. Aerokuda enemies do not constantly fly around. They'll sometimes find a spot to perch and take a rest or sleep for the night, and when they do so, some like to hang upside down, while others perch upright, clinging onto walls. Tears of the Kingdom is one of only 3 or 4 games where Ganondorf expresses no known interest in the Triforce depending on how you count, the other 2 games being Four Swords Adventures and then Oracle of Seasons / Oracle of Ages. Wearing the Yiga gear and striking up a conversation with disguised Yiga members around the overworld will have them expose themselves by stating that you should be keeping a low profile out and about. And yet, while Master Koga may not be the greatest frontman, he is at least smart enough to not be fooled by Link if you approach him while dressed in the full kit. And if you drop a bunch of bananas in front of a disguised Yiga anywhere in the overworld, they'll stare at it and exercise self-control to not immediately scurry over and gobble them up. However, if you throw bananas at them, they will disappear and you will lose them, which gave me the idea to try other foods like tomatoes. Say if they're a bad joke teller on a stage, you could throw tomatoes at them. And this works with all NPCs that I've tried anyway, including animals like goats and even cuckoos. In the 10-minute video of this series, I said that you need the fast travel feature to reach the Recall Shrine, but that's not exactly true. After completing the first 3 shrines, Rauru grants you the ability to fast travel, but you don't necessarily need it to get back up there. You can make it using the floating platforms to stack and climb one at a time, slowly, building a sort of staircase, which is tedious and tiresome, and that's why you get the fast travel. The house in Hateno that used to be Link's now belongs to Zelda, or did she move in with Link? The weapon displays have been replaced with artwork, which is a womanly touch. By the way, these photos depict scenes from the Lucky Clover Gazette quest. But not only that, Zelda's journal is found upstairs, and in it she literally refers to this building as her house. And as far as I understand, if you're playing the game on the Japanese language settings, this part actually translates to our house. And the sign out front labeling it as Master Link's house has been removed. And there's this Karen here who doesn't remember her old neighbor spying on Miss Zelda's house. I'm not calling her a Karen, that's her actual name. Then there's Clavia, who refers to it specifically as Princess Zelda's house. This might be a good place to mention if you want her to stay out of the house, you can set up, let's call it, an unconventional security system. A kind of explosive intruder deterrent. Anyway, Link can still sleep in this bed, something he can only do in his bed or at the inns. So it suggests that Link and Zelda moved in together and have been residing in Hateno since the end of the Calamity. She had a secret well built by Hudson where she keeps Link's old ponytail and her secret diary. Oh, and while we're down here, sort of unrelated, if you look at the wall where this desk sits, you'll find some children's artwork hanging. A Don Don, another of Hateno Village, another one of the Hateno School, and one of Princess Zelda holding a book standing by some silent princesses, most likely because she's the one who had the new school built for the kids of Hateno. If we go to the school, there are more children's drawings here. A Kuko laying an egg, a forest with mushrooms, Zelda holding hands with the children, and some potted silent princesses. Too bad silent princesses only thrive out in the wild. Hey. And upstairs, there's one of a kid helping Simon in class or doing a report or something, and I definitely know for sure I've seen one with Link with a big smiley face surrounded by the students of Hateno. I think you have to complete the quest to get that. We'll find out. When you activate every light route, you'll be given a reward with a useless prize, much like getting Hetsu's gift for finding all Korok seeds. I present to you the Dispelling Darkness Medal, proclaimed as a special item commemorating blessings received, but it doesn't do anything, and I'd personally rather receive nothing at all because I've already got a whole basement lit up here, and the satisfaction of doing it myself, so that's reward enough for me. What do I need another stagnant item in my inventory for? Although I do not need another item, I do sort of want an extra stagnant trinket in my inventory because the prize for finding all of the wells around the overworld is kinda cute. It's a snow globe with a well in front of some evergreen trees, and it's called All's Well, which is clever enough wordplay to mildly amuse me. I actually went exploring to find if this exact well exists around the overworld and discovered there are only 3 wells in the snowy regions, all in Hebra, and none matching completely. But this one found at the Snowfield stable was the closest match because the other 2 are uncovered and not surrounded by evergreens. I already mentioned the Maestro Mario connection in my Easter egg video, but I missed one interesting feature. So in case you haven't seen that video, not only does he sound like Mario, and look a bit like him with the mustache and body shape, they both have Italian names that start with M and end with O. The internal project name before this game was given an official title was X King, that's EX King. This name refers to the king in a deck of playing cards because Nintendo got its start in 1889 by producing handmade Japanese Hanafuda playing cards. The X is likely a callback to the project name for Breath of the Wild, which, if you watched my useless series on that game, you may already know the internal name for it was U-King because it was originally intended to be a Wii U exclusive. So the X likely stands for extra content or extended version of You King, because of course this game originally spawned from way too many ideas for downloadable extra content. And can we just acknowledge for a moment that the Zelda series in general gets this card reference treatment, whereas the Mario series does not. So tell me the higher-ups at Nintendo prefer Zelda to Mario without telling me that the higher-ups at Nintendo prefer Zelda to Mario. After defeating Yunobo and returning him to his senses, if you position Link in the exact right spot and then use Yunobo to blast open the blocked entrance, Link will stop him from leaving as he continuously tries to roll out of the cave, and Link just stands there looking up with his hands on his hips like some kind of small but mighty badass bouncer. If Link wears any one of the dragon armor shirts, his nails will become painted the color corresponding to the dragon. For example, here I've got Link dressed with the Ember shirt, and you can see the red nail polish on his left hand. Likewise, while wearing the Frostbite shirt, his nails are painted blue. This is a small detail that's reflected in the picture of the clothing itself in Link's inventory if you zoom in enough, but unfortunately it only applies to his actual hand, not the magical Rauru right arm hand, which since those nails are longer, it would have been kind of funny, honestly. And while we're speaking about dragons, we now know the 3 original ones we met in Breath of the Wild are not just named after the 3 goddesses who created Hyrule, Nehru, Farore, and Din, they actually are them. These 3 must have had their own secret stones and chosen to eat them at one point for whatever reason. Stories about this would have passed down through the centuries, eventually turning to legend, and it's likely the only reason why Minoru knows anything at all about dragonification.
There are stories about the secret stones and a forbidden act called draconification.
During the 30-minute video of this series, while showing the scene of Zelda in ancient Hyrule and talking about how the dueling peaks were at one point a single peak, I wasn't sure if there had ever been an official explanation given about how they split, but you guys have enlightened me to the fact that there was. A dragon flew through and split the mountain in half. We learned this from an old man named Shay who hangs around the lakeside stable. If you speak to him, among other things, he says, "You see the dueling peaks north of here? Well, apparently that used to be just one mountain a really long time ago. The legend says a dragon god split the mountain in half to forge a way through, and that's how it went from 1 to 2. Recently, some are even saying they've seen the shadow of a large creature on the surface of Lake Floria. So before Tears of the Kingdom came out, we all assumed he was talking specifically about Farosh. But now that we have a 4th dragon flying around in the Light Dragon, it seems that's most likely the one to have split the path, because when you analyze the 4 dragon flight paths, the Light Dragon passes right around the peaks, whereas Farosh stays much to the west of them. Also, in the Creating a Champion book on page 263, we see the first idea sketch of the dueling peaks where they appear more layered and rockier, as it described fractured terrain driven upward that was once connected. Using glitches, it's possible to create a mini working model of the solar system, or a solar system. I don't fully understand this one, so here's another clip from GameNiac. Apparently it uses some duplication, wood burning, the bubbles from the water temple, and auto build. I'd love to learn how to recreate this and possibly do a video showcasing and explaining fun, cool glitches and how to do them so you can too. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. Nintendo changed the way fire on torches is animated. In Tears, the fire comes all the way down onto the top of the wooden handle, but in Breath of the Wild, it stays on the end of the flammable material. But the one that Zelda uses in the prologue is mildly special. The proof is in how this specific torch has an unused icon and its actor name is NPC Zelda Torch. The one we find at the bottom of the imprisoning chamber during regular gameplay is a standard torch. In the E3 2021 trailer, we see Link ascend through a sky island that isn't in the finished game, and around that sky island there are many others that aren't recognizable, which could possibly mean they had more sky islands originally planned, but scrapped them for whatever reason. critics of this game would especially question a decision to minimize the Sky Islands. I love this game, and even I don't understand why there's barely anything up there compared to the total area of the surface, and considering the depths are essentially a whole duplicate layer, and how much of the marketing pre-released focused on exploring the skies. Perhaps it can be best explained simply by knowing if there were too many sky islands, they'd take up too much space and block out the sunlight, which is beautiful to play around in. It could also have been a marketing distraction, so we'd all be super surprised by the fully explorable depths. The Vo and U class used to be held right in Gerudo Town under Riju's throne room, accessed via the barracks. This room is left unused even after clearing the sand shroud from Queen Gibdo and restoring Gerudo Town, and the class now remains down in the underground shelter. But you can use Ultra Hand to bring the desk from the old classroom downstairs to the new one, and if you do, Ashi, the teacher, will turn her head and stare at it wherever you place it around her, and she even comments on it in a little speech bubble saying, "Oh my, that desk." However, she doesn't mention anything about it when you talk to her directly. In camera mode, capturing a shot is listed as the A button, but even though it doesn't say so, you can also use the R button. This is a nod to the prologue where during the cutscenes we get a close-up shot of Zelda snapping photos of the mural with the right trigger of the purapad. And you notice how when you look at the album, there are only 3 photos that Zelda took? Didn't she take a whole lot more during this whole prologue opening? I mean, how many did she really take? Well, technically she took an infinite number of pictures because if you just let her sit there, she'll keep on taking them forever. But the correct answer is 4. For some reason, they leave out this photo she takes over here. It's the first one she takes. And this photo of the mural with Link standing there holding the torch just couldn't be. He was standing next to her and kind of behind her the whole time. There was no time to move up ahead and stand in front for the shot. Why didn't Zelda take more pictures while she was in the past with the purapad? She ends up leaving it for Link to pick up thousands of years later, but she didn't even take any more to show her experiences while she was back there. Like, hey, this is what Raru looks like, this is what the Great Plateau used to look like, look out for this guy, his name is Ganondorf, check out my cute new outfit. I mean, it would have been cool if she documented something, or anything. The Sheikah tech didn't completely disappear due to its purpose being fulfilled as stated in an interview by Nintendo. Some has been repurposed. The warp point pedestals outside the Skyview Towers are the exact same pedestals as warp points seen in Breath of the Wild. They both say calling around the edge in Sheikah. And the platform inside the new towers that takes Link up look more like platforms from the Divine Beasts. They both have the Sheikah eye symbol in the center and say transport around the edge. And the grabby arms that secure him to the platform and plug in the purapad whenever you first unlock a tower were repurposed guardian legs, which explains why he's so scared the first time you open up a tower. It's the trauma of being attacked by guardians coming up again. Not to mention the terminals where he taps the purapad, which are reminiscent of pedestals and terminals found at towers, shrines, and inside Divine Beasts in Breath of the Wild. And finally, the shaft that leads up the Skyview Towers looks like the elevator shafts of the old shrines. So the decayed guardian atop the Hitano Ancient Tech Lab is most certainly not alone. Especially when you consider he's got these little decayed sentinel heads as decoration on display that I haven't mentioned before. A possible reason for making hearts less saturated in this game than they were in the first one, as I noted in the last video, might be that now that we have the OLED Switch, Nintendo doesn't want pixels running 100% red to reduce the risk of burn-in on players' screens. Alongside the hearts being desaturated, so too is red text. And blue text is not used at all in Tears of the Kingdom. Talking about the logo in this series has become the equivalent of talking about the different animations for opening up treasure chests in the Breath of the Wild series. So adding on another way the logo foreshadows events in the game is in the title graphic, where we see the dragons moving counterclockwise, hinting at time travel going back in time, which is exactly what we see Zelda do right off the bat. You can quote-unquote punch by using glitches to make weapons invisible. It works best with spears because the stabbing motion becomes a punching motion, but unfortunately it does not work on version 1.0, which is what I use. However, if you're running on version 1.2.0 or the current 1.2.1, it should definitely work, but I haven't tested any other versions. All you do is put links back against a solid wall, pause, drop the equipped weapon, and then equip and drop a second weapon. When you unpause, the weapon will be invisible and you can go around Hyrule throwing hands as long as you'd like. Besides the fact this one doesn't work on all versions, it's especially useless because you don't even deal any damage while in this state either, so it's purely for goofy fun having and shadowboxing practice. I've mentioned how cool I think it is that Hyrule has a pizza recipe in this game, and one of you stated how you love that Link canonically invented pizza, which got me thinking, did he really? Certainly he helped uncover the long-lost family secret ingredient, cheese. And so I researched this a bit farther. The poster of the Hylian tomato pizza recipe is not on the wall until you help discover cheese, and then go inside and help Koyan make it. So during this fade to black is when the culinary magic happens, but was it Link who created the recipe, or was it Koyan? I'm gonna say Koyan's the head chef, and Link is the sous chef. Link is either a master of all forms cooking, from desserts to seafood platters, or maybe he simply makes do with the ingredients he has on hand, because the artwork for the food often includes things that aren't found in Hyrule during gameplay. For example, we see olives on the pizza, along with green peppers or banana peppers, possibly even jalapenos, grapes, oranges, blueberries, and cherries on the fruitcake, a sprig of parsley on top of some whipped cream with another cherry and an orange peel garnish on the Noble Pursuit? And is that powdered sugar on the crepes? I think it is. Alright, he probably got that one from the cane sugar, and more I'm sure I'm missing. I've mentioned bragging rights for receiving Hetsu's gift, but there's one other reward for finding all Korok seeds. You get to see Hetsu's old dance again. You can have him perform the inventory dance moves from Breath of the Wild, as well as his newer dances. Still not really worth the effort, to be honest, because you can always go back to play Breath of the Wild anytime you really want to watch that, or come back and watch this part of the video. But congrats to all completionists out there who've caught them all. And yeah, that's kind of a Pokemon reference. There's quite a bit of unused dialogue on the cutting room floor. The goddess statue Hylia has unused text found in the code of the game saying, "You already overflow with life, force, and stamina. Increasing your power any further may destroy you." As of the making of this video, a glitch allowing this text to be viewed during gameplay has not yet been discovered. And if you speak with the horned statue with only 3 hearts and a single stamina wheel, which is impossible because it's required that you get a 4th heart container to open the back door of the Great Sky Island Temple of Time, but if you were to somehow do it, the horned statue would say, "What's this? You haven't received even 1 more heart container or stamina vessel. Such a pity. I was eager to help you with a minor transaction, but not if you have nothing to trade. Consult a goddess statue to improve yourself, and then return here to pray." And schema stones or Shima stones have an unused description that would have been shown if you found one before acquiring auto build. But again, since this is also impossible because getting auto build is a prerequisite for receiving schema stones, there's no way to see this text in-game, but perhaps once upon a time during development it was possible to start collecting them sooner, as an unused description reads, "A stone etched with what looks like a design schematic. It could be useful." Evidence shows the original ideas for the Ancient Heroes aspect were to have it behave more like a typical 3-piece outfit, where instead of completely transforming Link's physical appearance to that of the ancient Zonai hero, he'd just get dressed as usual. The unused version of the Ancient Heroes aspect was never fully named, known simply as Armor 1036 Upper and Armor 1036 Lower for the body and leg portions respectively. But the models and inventory icons do exist. Regular crystallized charges are internally named Energy Material 1. Then there's large crystallized charges, which are named Energy Material 3. And finally, the huge crystallized charges are Energy Material 4. There is no record of Energy Material 2. suggesting there's one more variation of crystallized charges that never made it into the final game. Perhaps this was meant to be a size run including small, medium, large, and extra large, but they cut out medium and then made small, regular, and there you go. There are 53 paraglider fabrics to swap between, but there used to be plans for several more. All paraglider fabrics except the ordinary default fabric are named Object or OBJ, Substitute Cloth, and then a number. The numbers would range from 0 to 56. What's odd though is that numbers 42, 44, 47, 50, and 54 don't have a corresponding fabric, suggesting Nintendo decided to scale back a bit. The temperature gauge in the bottom right corner reads exactly the same no matter what your Switch's regional settings are, but in North America there's a little F for Fahrenheit, and for every other regional setting there's a C for Celsius. Another regional difference that's a bit more practical is that in North America and Japan the game uses a 12-hour clock, while in Europe and Australia the clock reads in 24-hour time. You can chop down the various wooden signs found around the overworld and fuse them to a weapon. They have no special effects and only have an attack power of 1, but cutting them down does remind me of messing around in Ocarina of Time. You can only chop them down horizontally, not vertically like in that game, and if you fuse them to a spear and walk around slowly, it looks like Link has a picket sign for some sort of protest. I want to talk more about useless fuses in just a moment, but first, I've seen others talk about how you can fire this cannon inside Gerudo Town, but haven't seen another video mention that you can actually climb inside it. It's tricky unless you build a little ramp with Zonai devices or something, but once you have Link positioned standing in front, just crouch down and climb in. It has camera collision inside and everything. It's another thing that reminds me of Ocarina of Time while crawling through tight spaces. I also like to think this Gerudo soldier over here is about as unimpressed as you could possibly be, because as she looks in the cannon's direction, she says, "It's time for a drink." After you do the disappearing Duchess side quest to rescue Selmy, you can shoot the breeze with her student Finn about shields and take his advice. He's really into it. If you approach him with a sled already attached to your shield, he'll be impressed, commenting, "Way to expand what's possible," and consider you a true shield surfer, staying flexible. He's not as impressed by icy meat shields using a raw gourmet cut of meat, noting the change makes it harder to slide on, the reverse of what we want. However, he does think that the icy meat shield using a regular cut of meat is pretty cool, noting a reduction in friction, making it easier to slide on, and a good choice for beginners. And of the things I tested, he seemed most blown away by attaching a cart up there, wondering if anybody's ever done that before, and that it makes it really fast. And further saying doing things like this that no one's ever done before makes a bright future for the sport. Typically, when you hand over the rupees to Ronson to purchase a plot of land to start building your dream house, she says it's a bit southeast of here and has an excellent view. She'll further go on to say, as the camera turns to look at where this land is, while it is a bit far away, there's a shrine over in that direction, okay? But if you buy the land in the early morning, like 7, 8 a.m., maybe as late as 9, as the sun is rising, we can see when the camera turns to look at the land, she says, it could be a little tough to spot it due to the sun. But there is a shrine over in that direction, okay? If you fly a hover bike on the border between regular gravity and low gravity, it creates a visual effect similar to something you'd expect to see in movies when a spaceship is going through a time warp or engaging in warp speed hyperdrive or something. I found this easiest to do around the Sky Labyrinths, but anywhere this barrier is found should work. To the best of my ability to count and do math, I wanted to find out how many fused creations can you make. There are 145 unique fusible items that include one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, spears or pole arms, and shields. 146 if you include arrows. According to this list, there are only 73 unique fused items, which makes no sense. Now, we've already seen how some things with different combos are named the same, like the icy meat shield being made with 2 different kinds of meat, but this figure is way off. To attempt breaking it down, there are 251 inventory materials, but you cannot fuse to the 39 different seafood or critters, and you can't fuse to fairies either. However, you can fuse to all 27 Zonai devices for a total of 238 fusible inventory items. So every single weapon and shield should have a minimum of 238 fused variants, but that doesn't even include all the random stuff around the overworld and inside shrines you can fuse to, like Evermean logs, regular logs, rocks, hooks, wooden signs, the seal stuffed animals in Riju's bedroom, etc. Or what about fusing weapons to other weapons? And for that matter, what about decayed weapons versus pristine? The grand total of fused weapons should be theoretically possible to calculate, but it quickly gets outrageously tricky. Then there's also the fact you can fuse any of those 238 fusible inventory items to your arrows, which tends to get a bit ridiculous, especially when you start moving over to the Zonai devices, because I can't think of a single instance where you'd want to shoot a steering stick off into something. So arrows are limited by comparison because you can't fuse the weapons, overworld stuff, or shrine items to them either. The sheer number of things you can combine to make stronger equipment started to blow my mind. Using conservative figures and erring on the side of underestimation, there are well over 120,000 different weapons and shields you can create using fuse. Put that in your skillet and let it simmer. Thank you so very much for watching. If you made it this far, please leave a like on the video. It helps the channel out tremendously. And subscribe to catch more content like this as it drops in the future. Also, thank you once again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. And until next time, stay well, stay cool, and always keep punching out there. Aloha.